This week's Torah portion is Parashat Vayechi. It's the last Torah portion in the book of Exodus. And we read in it about Jacob, our forefather. So our teachers teach us that Jacob asked for sickness so that he would know that it was coming up to the end of his life, that he was about to die, and that the sickness was an indicator that he was about to die. And so what he did in the end of his days was he brought his sons to his bedside as he's dying, and he blesses each one of them. He gives each one a blessing that is unique to each one of his children, to who they are, what strengths they have, what their character traits are, what their gifts are, that each son of his gets a special, unique blessing. He also blesses his two grandsons from Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and this is the first time we see a grandparent blessing a grandchild. So what Jacob is teaching us is the importance of the end of life conversations, that these are conversations that can happen between a person who is dying and the people that mean the most to them. They can bless each other, they can forgive each other, they can express their love for each other, and they can share the values. The person who's dying can share the values that they have, that they want the people around them to know what they stood for and what was important to them. So the first thing I want to pull out of this week's Torah portion is the importance of the end of life conversations, if it's possible to have them. Then Jacob makes Joseph promise to bury him in the land of Israel, to not bury him in Egypt. This is another important teaching, that the Jewish way is to be buried, ideally in Israel, but not necessarily. It's always possible, not ever possible to always be buried in Israel, buried wherever, but to be buried, that it's important to be buried. And that the burial place becomes a place of inspiration, a place of comfort, that people can go to the place where people are buried, whether it's our ancestors or our holy, righteous people, and we can ask for them to take a prayer up to God for us. Or we can ask our own prayers that in the merit of the person buried here, that God should listen to us. But to have a grave, to have a place to go, is also important to know is the Jewish way. So the two things that I've pulled out so far, the importance of end of life conversations and the importance of burial. The third thing I want to point out is that Jacob, at the end of his life, he pulls his children together to bless them, but he also wants to tell them, say our commentators, about the time that will happen at the end of days, that there will be a Messiah and that there will be this world to come, the Olam Haba, where there'll be no more death and there'll be no more suffering, and that we will then all bask in divine light for all eternity. There will be a resurrection of the dead, that all these teachings are ones that Jacob wanted to share with his children. And we read that and we learn that he lost his prophecy and he wasn't able to share this information with his children. But perhaps what's really important is to know that there is such a concept, that as much as we live in a dark world with killings and death and suffering, that it's not for all time, that there's hope that that the end of days will come soon, the Messiah will come soon, and we will all bask in divine light and there'll be no more suffering and no more death.